So we'll wait a few minutes for people to join in. If you are watching this, we're having a few people on right now. Maybe just take a moment to, in the comment box, say hello, tell us where you're watching this from. And while we let people join, I'm just going to do a quick little check-in with you, Amanda. And
sure.
How are you doing? How's your day been so far?
So far, it's been a great day. It's sunny here, which it was snowing yesterday. I'm just outside of Portland, Maine. It snowed a little bit yesterday, so to have sunshine was amazing. It was really good. That's a joy. And I also, this on a much more personal level, I am finally getting to the point in stay at home where my bangs are doing the thing where I can move them out of my face so I don't look like the shaggy dog talking to you today.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Now, have you gotten into home? Like, I refuse to cut hair here. I have good scissors because when Ash was little, I cut his hair, but I just don't want to go there.
No, I'm afraid to. I'm afraid that I'm going to end up sort of lopsided and all of those things. So yeah. No, I think we're just going to roll with it and see what comes out when we're done here.
Yes. I know Darren suggested getting the Flowbee. Do you remember the Flowbee?
Oh, is that the one that goes on the vacuum cleaner?
Yeah, it's like a vacuum cleaner.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, not for me, but for him. But
that is something you should Facebook live stream if that happens.
Yeah. Or maybe we should all be investing in Flowbee stock right now. Yeah, I'll just say here, we actually had the most stunning, beautiful spring day yesterday. It was breathtaking. And we have a little front stoop. We don't typically get sun, but the edge towards the gate does. So I brought out a towel and I just sat with my back to the gate and had my laptop, and I got a little sun on my face, and it just made me so very happy.
It's such a difference. Just the idea of just the sunshine makes me feel brighter. It makes me feel like better too. And I'm sure everybody out there can relate to that feeling.
Totally, 100%.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to check over here. All right, we've got 25 people on. We have people from Vancouver, Switzerland, Austin, Dallas. Awesome. Welcome. Feel free to, South Jersey. Hello, Roberta. Awesome. And so for those of you watching, again, if you want to share a little bright spot with us, I think it's nice to think about the bright spots. Amanda just shared, if you're just joining us, that her bangs have grown out to a point where she can push them off her forehead, which that's an awesome bright spot. I'm trying to think
small wins sometimes, I think. Like
for sure.
Wins, right?
I'm a big fan of the smallest bright spots. Sometimes they're harder to find. I think my bright spot is that I finally found some yeast. And I actually found it at a bodega down the street, and it's a block of live yeast, which I've never cooked with or baked with before. And I was like, what is this strange thing? But we figured it out, and Ash and I actually made soft pretzels the other day. So we've got a whole plan of things to be baking. So if you have a bright spot, if you're watching, feel free to share it. I just want to say before we even get started that I'm going to be doing giveaway of 3 copies of Amanda's book, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes. And so the way to be, I don't really do, this is like the first time I've done a contest, but anyway, this is how it's going to work. The way to be entered in the contest is to leave a comment in the thread. And then when this is all over, not the pandemic, when this Facebook Live is all over, I will go through and I will randomly select 3 people, and I will get books mailed out to you this week. So I'll remind.
Why don't we make that 5? Because I will make sure I get 2 to people too. So let's.
Okay, 5 books, people.
5 books.
The odds are pretty good right now. There's 27 people, so write in that comments. Roberta's been exercising twice a day, virtual Zumba. That's awesome.
Amazing. That is amazing.
And an outdoor walk unheard for me in the past. Just watched a guy wrapping fox in socks from a Facebook post. That made my day. That's awesome.
That is awesome.
We've got Vancouver Island, Omaha. Awesome.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you. Wow.
Yeah. this
Yeah.
is great. Awesome. So, all right, I'm going to formally introduce Amanda for those of you who aren't familiar with her, because she's awesome. I've known her for several years now, and she's been on the podcast a couple of times, including yesterday.
Right.
But let me just give you like the formal intro here, and I'm going to read it so I don't screw anything up. Okay. Amanda Morin is a speaker and author. She's the host of the In It podcast, which is awesome. They're very authentic, real conversations about things everyone in this community totally will relate to.
And we'll be coming back in mid-May. So
excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Perfect. She's a former classroom teacher and early intervention specialist. She's a mom, an all-around wearer of many hats. She also serves as a writer and senior expert in family advocacy and education for Understood, where she teaches about using empathy, which we're talking about today, as a tool to understand difference and embrace inclusion. She has written 4 books, including the Everything Parents Guide to Special Education, the Everything Kids Learning Activities books, and activities book, and the On the Go Fun for Kids book. And her newest one, just out yesterday, happy book birthday.
Thank you.
And what we're talking about today is called What is Empathy? A Bullying Storybook for Kids. And as she said earlier, she lives in Maine with her family. So
I do.
Welcome.
So, thank you. I always hear my bio and think I'm very tired just listening to it.
Yeah.
I'm not doing all of those things at the same time. So that's good.
No.
Yeah.
You have a busy house too. How many children do you have?
I have 3. One who is an adult and she's out on her own now, but I still have 2 at home, a 10-year-old and a 17-year-old. So we are busy. And
those are such different phases of life too. So you're just the hormones, everything is completely.
Oh, it's neurons gone wild around here. We just kind of roll with whatever happens from day to day. It's great.
Neurons gone wild. That just flashed me back to MTV in the 80s or 90s, but we're not going to go into that. Okay. So thank you for that. So again, Amanda was my guest on yesterday's podcast. So definitely go back and listen to that. If you haven't, we had a really lovely conversation. And so again, I wanted to celebrate Amanda's new book. And as we're talking, I want to encourage you to write any questions that pop up in the comments, and we'll see if we can get to them at the end. And I'm just seeing that someone asked if this is being recorded. This will live in the Tilt Together page for all eternity. For better or for worse, it will be here as long as Facebook's around. So yeah, you can come back and watch this later. And let's talk about your book. So
sure.
Oh, good. Yes, I know.
There.
I have it electronically.
No, so this is the book.
That's the book. What is Empathy? A bullying storybook for kids. And again, just came out yesterday. I had a chance to read it in advance, and I just absolutely loved it. As you know, I'm a little gushy about it, but can you just tell us a little bit about the book and introduce it to us? You can even show us a couple pages, whatever you want to do.
I didn't even think about that. That's the cool thing about having it in hand. So it is a storybook, and it's interesting that it's called a bullying storybook. It is a story of 2 girls named Sophia and Ava, who are bestest of friends. I mean, they've been friends forever, and one of them moves away, and another child enters sort of their sphere, and they're trying to work out some friendship issues, some sort of like friendship issues. And what I do in the book, so I will just show you in the beginning, there's sort of, it's hard to see, but it's a letter and guide to parents and educators to walk through the idea of empathy and thoughts that you can talk to kids about. And then you get to meet Sophia, who is absolutely adorable and on her way to school for the first day. She's nervous. She's not sure what's happening because she moved away. And so I told the story of Sophia and how life goes for her as she goes through the day and realizes that her friend is not as friendly as she used to be. And so we see her go through this journey and talking to the adults in her life about how she's feeling, talking to her friends, and they're trying to explain the idea of empathy to her so she can take another perspective. So then after we hear Sophia's story, I told the same story again through Ava's perspective to give readers an opportunity to see what it really looks like to look inside a story from two different perspectives. So it was super fun to do. And it was really neat because in the midst of it, I'm trying to find the right page here. First of all, I'm just going to show my favorite picture. And I will tell you that I had an incredible illustrator. These are not my illustrations. And he was just wonderful. He could like read my mind. I love this one. This is where Sophia is thinking that empathy is a superpower. So I love this picture. And when we get to the middle where Sophia's story ends, there's then some questions that you can use as question starters to read the next section. So things like, how are the stories alike and different? What are the parts that are the same and different through different points of view? And also to ask kids, do you feel differently about any of the characters when you read it the next time around? I actually came downstairs the other day and my own 10-year-old was reading the book and I thought that was an incredible win. And he said to me, we don't get to hear the other girl's story. Where's the other girl's story? And I told him he needs to write it for us. So I think it can open up lots of conversations for people too. Ooh. And I don't know if I am still here or Debbie is still here or I'm not. I don't know if I should keep talking. If you're out there, everybody, hello. We may have lost Debbie for a minute, and we are talking about empathy today. I feel like I've just done a tilt together takeover on this page. We were doing a Facebook Live. We're talking about empathy today, and I have the opportunity to just keep this conversation going right now, I think. I'm going to check in and see. Debbie's going to come back. I think she's rebooting her computer. So I just decided to do a takeover and talk about empathy for a little bit. I did a tilt takeover. Hello.
Oh my gosh. Can I just say, my computer just turned off. That has never happened before. It just turned off. And I'm so glad that you were able to keep talking. And I was posting in here, I'll be right there, technical difficulties. So sorry to leave you hanging like that.
It's fine. You know what? We've all had situations. It's a perfect conversation to have when we're talking about empathy, because we've all had situations where we go, this did not work the way I expected it to.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. And I got the strangest message that makes me think my computer is going to self-destruct. It had this warning message in different languages that I don't read or recognize. So we'll just see what happens. Tell me where, I know you were showing illustrations, you were showing something. So where did you end with that before you realized I was gone?
I don't actually know. So we're just going to keep,
we're going to keep going.
We're going to keep going. This is actually the most fun Facebook Live I've ever done, because now it's just like we're fine. I think it's perfect for the Tilt group, because we just roll with what happens on a regular basis.
For sure.
In our lives.
We are good at pivoting. Like
we're definitely good at pivoting. I think where I ended was that this is a book that shows you two different perspectives. And the idea is to really walk kids through the journey of empathy by showing them how things can look through different perspectives. And I also wanted to make it enjoyable, because there's nothing as a parent that I feel more uncomfortable about than reading a book to my child where it feels like the lesson is so right there in front of them that it feels like I'm lecturing to them instead of actually just reading a story. And so I tried really hard to make it relatable. I had a wonderful 10-year-old researcher at my side who told me this is not what kids would say, and this is what they would say instead, which was super fun. And then I loved the idea of putting together a book that shows some of the literal things about empathy. So the things that people say, it's walking in another person's shoes, it's seeing through somebody else's eyes. In this story, and I think especially with differently wired kids who take things very literally, in this story, I made sure to talk through what those actually mean? And so you see both of the girls sort of struggling to see if these mean exactly what they say, right? So does it mean, how do you see through somebody else's eyes? How do you walk in their shoes? And so we talk through, in the book, it talks through that. I was thinking very specifically of the fact that there are kids who take things so literally that it was important to really describe what that actually means. And it was fun to do that too. It was fun to think through what would a child really think when I say, you need to see it through somebody else's eyes. And just as a quick, little peek into the book, one of the little girls wears glasses, and what she thought it meant was the other little girl had to wear her glasses to see it through her eyes, and didn't work out so well. So we kept going. But it was fun. And I think empathy is a topic that's so hard to teach, that it's really, taking kids through the journey by letting them be part of the story was really interesting and fun.
Yeah, no, I love that. The walking in somebody else's shoe. Like, I think that was really brilliant. There were so many little touches. It was very thoughtful in the way that you approach this topic. I'm curious to know about your research into kind of the state of empathy in kids today. Like, when we were talking for the podcast, I was saying it wasn't something I grew up even probably never even heard the word as a young person. And like, in general, are kids more empathetic, do you think, now, kind of naturally? And what kind of research did you do to kind of understand how to best approach kids about this topic?
Sure. I don't think necessarily that kids are naturally more empathetic. I think it's a skill like any other skill that needs to be learned. I think we have this interesting way of talking about hard skills and soft skills. And hard skills are things that you actually just do. You learn how to do, like tying shoes is a hard skill. And soft skills we talk about are sort of the more emotional, social emotional skills. I think that they are all skills and they all need to be learned and taught. And I have, and understood, I get to work with so many teachers across the nation and get a peek into their classrooms, which is so exciting to me. I think I am a teacher at heart. I was in the classroom for so many years, and I miss that interaction in the classroom. So I kind of live vicariously through these teachers. And they tell us, social emotional learning is something they really work hard on. And I get to hear stories of when it doesn't go well in their classrooms with other kids and how kids are trying to engage with each other. And I get to hear these great stories of how teachers are doing it really well. So some of my research was around just knowing what's happening with kids today, watching what's happening with my own kids, and then just to be able to look at just the research around empathy. Brene Brown is such a resource for me. Just an amazing, amazing human who does so much information and research. Angela Duckworth does great work around growth mindset, which ties into empathy as well. And I think just to see the stages, right? Because empathy is a developmental skill. We develop it over time. Kids aren't, a lot of kids just don't see outside of themselves. And I don't think that's necessarily a problem to start with, because that's just the way their world builds. It builds from the inside out. And what I was thinking about when I was writing this book is, how do we accelerate that process a little bit? How do we give kids the skills to see outside of themselves if they haven't gotten there already? And I think it was about really thinking through what goes into that. And in the book, in the letter to kid readers, I talk about it being like a detective skill, that you have to be sort of curious and asking questions and being kind, and it really is. It's like an investigative skill to be empathetic. So real life research. I did a lot of reading on empathy, and it's just sort of a passion of mine anyway. It's a weird passion to have, maybe, but it's my passion is empathy. It's a good passion.
Well, I love that you mentioned Brene Brown. Also, I'm also a big fan, and I just want to share someone in my Differently Wired Club just told me earlier this week about an episode of her new podcast, Unlocking Us, which I listened to during my run yesterday, and it was so good. And I'll share the link in the comments here. I don't know if you've heard that her new show, but yeah, so it was the episode about just like compassion and the 50-50 balance, the balance that we're trying to create in our home, and what does that actually look like? And for me, it was just such a good reminder just of, you know, the empathy we need to show, especially in these days, you know, to
Right.
show the people
Right.
in our homes. And if we are sharing our home with another parent and partner, what that can look like too.
Yes.
So I love that you relied on her. And I wanted to just touch upon something. You know, you said this is something we develop over time. Can you speak to, you know, I think there is fear that parents have if they're noticing that empathy is a lagging skill, or they see it in other kids and they're like, oh my gosh, my child has zero empathy. They don't notice anything. And I think that can spark a lot of worry for a lot of parents. So what would you say to them?
Well, first, I would say that I was one of those parents for a long time. You know, I think a lot of people who have heard me or know me know that two of my three children are also differently wired, and two of them have autism spectrum disorder, which presented differently, right, at a younger age, and so their emotional development was a little bit different. And for a long time, I worried that they weren't showing empathy, that they didn't think beyond themselves. And then I realized they did, they just didn't have the language for it. And so for me, it was this moment of aha, okay, because what I could say is, what do you think just happened with so and so when he fell down on the playground? And the answers I was getting back is, well, if that were me, I would feel really sad, or I would feel embarrassed, or I would wonder if anybody noticed if I'm hurt, and those kinds of things. And I realized, oh, okay, wait, this is going on inside their heads. I just have to like bring it out a little bit. So I think the first thing I would say is, do not think immediately that your child is not going to develop that skill.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would also say that, you know, even adults are still developing the skill, and that there are a lot of components to it. It's not just about like caring for somebody else. It's like you said, it's compassion. It's that ability to see that there are other emotions in the world, right? That ability to see that there are other perspectives. So I think it can be delayed as a skill, but I also think that you can start building on the pieces around it. And there are questions you can ask around, what do you think, kind of questions. I think a lot of kids who are differently wired often spend a lot of time in their heads. And I think that that's because there's so much going on inside their heads, right? And I can speak to this too, because I also identify as differently wired, and my head is always going a mile a minute. And I kind of never, I have to stop and slow down and realize that not everybody knows what's going on inside my head. So if I start a conversation in the midst of my own thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
I need to back up and say, okay, wait, you don't know that what you just said triggered this for me as a conversation starter, or that kind of thing. And so with kids who are differently wired, I think part of it is just backing them up and saying, what made you think of that? You know, and then they can start thinking, oh, there's something going on in this person's head that made them think that.
Yeah.
I have one child who thinks in song lyrics. It's kind of amazing. So anything I say, he has like a song that he'll start singing. Like, it's just hilarious.
That's so cool.
It's really funny, but it's like, you sometimes never know what I've never know what I said that triggered the song that comes out of his mouth. And I had to learn that that was a way of communicating with me too, and that he was listening to what I was saying and thinking about what I was feeling and thinking. It just came out differently for him.
I just have to ask, this is just because I'm so curious. I'm
Sure.
a big show tunes buff, and sometimes I decide I'm going to sing everything today, and I drive my family crazy. But like, do you sing back to your son who does this?
I do. I do, because I'm a big music person, a musical person. I'm so happy to have somebody who will sing with me.
Yeah.
So we'll sing back to him. It depends on the song sometimes, you know, sometimes we'll redirect it to a different one. And it's fun. But I think it's important to realize that everybody is on their own journey. And that's what we can start teaching kids is, you know, and especially right now where we're all sort of separated from each other, but also feeling the need to understand what's going on around us, to be able to say, you know, everybody's at home, everybody's doing their own things, and how do you think that feels for so and so right now? You know, how we got the little Benjamin, my son who sings a lot, put him on a video chat with a friend, and they just stared at each other, and it was hilarious. And then they started chatting in the box, and the so they're looking at each other and just chatting in the box. How's it going for you? How are you today? But they were asking each other, what's going on in your house, right? Like, is everything okay? How are your parents? And it was so interesting to me to see that they were starting to ask those kinds of questions.
Mhm.
I was really pleased to see that they were thinking, okay, this is happening everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. This is a very unifying incident. And so often our kids feel that what's happening in their world is just in their world, because sometimes it is, right?
Right.
Sometimes they are the outlier. They are the only one who's going through this. And so I think the fact that this is happening to everyone, as terrible as it is, it's also for our kids, presents a really interesting opportunity for them. And I also just have to add that one of the ways that I used to spark these conversations with Asher and just try to get him to start thinking about other people was we used to watch Project Runway together all the time.
Amazing.
And there's just so much opportunity to discuss interpersonal dynamics and it's a very heightened emotions. And so just to be like, gosh, or I would just pause. How do you think he's feeling right now? Like, what are you noticing? How would you feel? That kind of thing. So it can be really fun too, to weave into our.
It is. We've been watching Encore. I don't know if you know Encore. It's actually a Disney Plus show, and it's about bringing senior classes back to do their this is so peripheral, but they're doing the High School Musical that they did. So they come back like 15, 20, 25 years later and bring them together. It's an amazing show. And we watched that one together, and the interpersonal relationships there is so amazing. It's a great opportunity to say, like, how has this person changed from where they were in high school? How do they interact differently than they talk about when they were in high school? I never thought it would be that, but it's been such a great show to build that. And also it's just fun. It's just so much fun.
I'm totally going to watch that. That sounds, as someone who was in all the High School Musicals, I would love to see that. I want to touch upon the opposite. So we've talked about kids who may have lagging empathetic skills, or just really struggle with that theory of mind, or even noticing anything happening outside of themselves.
Yeah.
We also know that there are many differently wired kids who are hypersensitive and who may feel things too deeply and experience things too deeply. So can you talk about that in the context of your book, or, just thoughts for parents whose kids have that response?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that is really important to note, that there are kids who sort of feel the world really heavily. And when they walk into a room, they sort of absorb the energy of the room. And I think I'm a person like that. And my spouse is amazing at pointing out to me when it's not my own emotion, it's somebody else's emotion. And I think that has taught me that that's something we can do with kids, is just say, are you feeling this? Or are you feeling it for somebody else, right? Mm-hmm. To be able to say to them, it's okay to feel with somebody, but let's separate out, how are you today? Are you sad, or are you sad for this person, right? Or are you sad because they're sad? That sounds simple to do. When I say it out loud, it's not that simple to do. And I know that, and I want parents to know that I know that, because it's a hard thing to do. But I think it's a first step. That first step is to be able to even just say, I know that you are a really empathetic person, and it's just one of the things for me, is what I would say is, it's one of the things I love best about you as a child, I think, is that you really feel for the world. But to be able to step back a little bit and to help them realize that you can still be compassionate for somebody, and you don't have to feel their own emotions, that you can feel your own, and you don't have to interject yourself in that way. I think it's going to be really healthy. It's really healthy for kids to be able to realize that emotions can happen in parallel. You can be feeling, you can be feeling happy about something that happened in your life today. I mean, it may be that your bangs have grown out and you're super happy about that. And you can also know that your friend Debbie is feeling a little flustered because her computer just crashed in the middle of a Facebook Live, right? And so we can feel those things at the same time, but I don't have to feel and I can't even name your emotion because I don't know what your emotion is, right? But I don't have to feel what you felt, but I can certainly like say to you, that must have been really tough. That was really tough. And step back and say, but that didn't happen to me. And I'm going to express, support. So I think, and I think sometimes it's just not that easy. And I think sometimes it's a matter of some kids just need to limit how many kids and people they're around at the same time because it can be overwhelming.
Yeah, I imagine part of it is helping your child, just as with any quality of who our child is, we want them to know themselves and to understand who they are, how they experience the world, and then how to support themselves in that experience. So I guess that's one piece of it, is just that self-awareness. Yeah. And then I'm wondering if there are, or if you've discovered any strategies to help kids deal with that. Whether even as you were talking, I'm wondering if there are ways to kind of channel that feeling into something that could be productive, whether that's, well, this is something you're feeling deeply, and actually we can take action to support that cause or something. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I do. I definitely do. I think that's like the perfect experience, is to be able to say, how would you like to help? Right? What is it that you want to do to help here? I know a lot of people whose kids have started sort of like charities and fundraisers and things like that, and channeling that energy has been really helpful for them. They donate their birthday to a cause, or they raise all of their pennies for a cause or something like that. And I also think naming those feelings, and for some kids it's writing, right? Some kids it's you can write it down. You can have a feelings jar, I think, is really a neat thing to do. You just a jar, like a peanut butter jar or whatever jar you have around the house, because I don't know that I have a peanut butter jar around the house, but I have something, I'm sure. Have them write down the feeling and why they think they're feeling it, put in the feelings jar, and then go back like after a week and see if you can come back. And if they remember that, it's easy to point out after the fact that now you feel the distance, right? You're feeling a little distance. It's not happening to you right now. So I love that one. And I also think, there are kids who don't like to write. So it's drawing the picture, it's recording it. It's, some kids I know have private YouTube channels, right? So, and I say private because we don't always want our kids' feelings out in the world, but to record it and then put it up into the cloud, into their private YouTube channel, gives them their opportunity to really talk about what they're feeling. So that's super fun, I think.
That's great. And I there's a lot of people talking on the chat over here, and Roberta said, and also knowing that, we don't need to, helping our kids know they don't need to fix the problem, that, we can also recognize that everyone's having their own experience here, and everyone is creative, resourceful, and whole. Like, we can't control other people's feelings, and we can't control other people's experiences.
I love that. Roberta, thank you for pointing that out. And I think Debbie and I talked about that on the podcast yesterday a little bit, the idea of, not jumping into fix-it mode and teaching our kids that we don't have to fix things for other people, that it's enough to listen sometimes. You mentioned that, like, the circle of control, and I think that's perfect, that ability to, like, what can I control? What can I not control? What should I not even try to control is a really good exercise. I think I do it once a month myself, just to make sure I'm like centered in my own way. I love that idea of, like, there are phrases you can use, I think as adults and as kids, to say, what do you want from me here? How can I help you? And it's a matter of making sure that you're asking that question. Sometimes, I have a teenager in the house, and sometimes the question is, do you want to just vent at me? Is that what you need right now? And a lot of times the answer is yes. A lot of it's just, so I don't know how that is with Asher, but in our house, there's a lot of that. It's a lot of just sort of ranting, and then he feels better.
Yeah.
And I have to remember that I'm not supposed to interject, and I'm not supposed to have opinions. I have to just listen.
Just be a receptacle.
Yes.
While setting boundaries for yourself, right? Like, I can listen to this for 10 minutes, you've got me. And then I'm going to actually have to move on to something else. But right now, let it rip. I'll just kind of set those clear starting and endings for those sessions.
And for me, the boundary is very often I'll listen to this once, I don't want you to circle, I will listen to it, and then you've told it to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then either we're going to move on or you can go figure it out differently. So it's not circling.
Yeah, there's something when I was doing my life coach training, we learned this term called story fondling. And that is this idea where we just continue, the more we tell the same story, the more power that story has. So that is a balance I'm always looking to strike. Like, I'll listen to this, fine, then I'll listen to it again. But at a certain point, I'm like, so I know this story, and I'm not going to reinforce it at this point by giving it more air. So
absolutely.
Before, I want to ask one more question, and then we'll see if there are any questions in the group, which I'm having trouble. The reason I keep looking over here is this is where I'm watching the stream, and I'm kind of trying to catch comments as they go by because I can't see them all during the live itself. So
we can always go back and answer them too. Like we can do that too. So if your question doesn't get answered or your comment, I'm happy to jump in and come back and
that's awesome. Thank you. Okay. And just a reminder, before I ask this last question, if you joined us a little late, that we are giving away 5 copies of Amanda's awesome book, What is Empathy? And the way to be entered is to leave a comment or a question or share a bright spot in the chat here. You don't get double entries for multiple comments. I'm just going to say that. So anyway, so be sure to do that. And then when this is over, I'll randomly pick 5 people and I'll send you a DM. Okay. My question is, again, I was back to Brene Brown listening to this podcast yesterday. She did talk about self-compassion and being empathetic towards ourselves right now. And this idea that some of us think we don't have a right to be empathetic with ourselves because maybe our circumstance isn't as dire as somebody else's. And she's like, it's not a limited resource. And actually being empathetic with yourself spawns more empathy for others. But can you talk about, just in the context of what we're experiencing right now, why, just the role that we as parents and caregivers can take with empathy in our lives?
This is something that is so important to me because I came to it late in the game in this stay-at-home thing. I was trying to be everything to everybody. Mm-hmm. And then I realized I was becoming very unpleasant to everybody. I was not my best self. And realizing that I had to think about, how I was feeling and taking care of like my own emotions and taking time for myself, even if it was just like 15 minutes to read something that wasn't the news or was, a book that I really wanted to read. I think right now it's really hard because we're on top of each other. A lot of us are in small places. We're right on top of each other. There's emotions like all over the place. And I think it's really important to remember that you matter. Like, to me, that's the crux of it. You matter too. And you can't be available to other people to take care of them if you don't recognize that you matter and your feelings matter. And there are so many right now, you're right, there are so many different like levels of things going on in people's lives, but it doesn't mean that what is happening to you isn't real, right? It's not a comparison, it's not a competition. However you feel is however you feel, and you need to, I think, listen to that and take care of it and the best you can. And I think that that's the important part, is right now we're in a place where it's the best you can. And something like this, like just, I don't know who's listening, and I know that I'm talking to you and I'm talking to a bunch of people. Just taking the time to do this, to listen to the conversation, to talk to somebody else, or just be around something that makes you happy. We started this with it's sunny where I am today, and that it brightened my entire mood. Taking the time to enjoy the sunshine is self-compassion for me, is to realize that I have to walk away from my desk, from the children, from whatever, and just take a moment to soak in and calm and center myself is so important. and it's just that you matter, and what happens to you and what's going on with you is so meaningful, and it's not diminished by anybody else's experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to add to that, and I'm just going to say, because there is a little bit of a lag, as I'm talking, if you do have a question, now's the time to pop it in, because we're going to wrap up. But I want to say two things to what you just said. Like, when we show empathy to ourselves, we're also modeling that for our kids, which is so critical. Our kids can be really hard on themselves often. And so modeling that. And I do want to say, you know, I love that you said the best that we can. I know so many parents are struggling right now. I've heard this so much from parents in this community that they're feeling, you know, just everything, the pressure. And then if they're not showing up the way they want to, they feel guilty, and it's the shame spiral. And it's, you know, and then, you know, I talk a lot about self-compassion, and even that can be like, well, I'm not good at that, so now I'm failing at being self-compassionate. And like, this is a spiral. So we are doing the best we can. You know, we're all going to be making less than brilliant parenting statements and doing things that we'll be like, oh gosh, you know, because we're doing the best we can. This is an incredible experience that we're all going through right now. And so even if that's self-compassion and empathy, self-empathy is just being nice to yourself, not beating yourself up. We all get a do-over. I actually just talked with Tina Payne Bryson for this show that comes out next week. And we talked a lot about that. The gifts in all of these screw ups, that these are actually wonderful times to repair, and through the repair to connect and grow and develop all of these skills that we're talking about.
Yeah. And I think I would just also add to that, I love the phrase comparison is the thief of joy, right? So I think a lot of us as parents right now are watching what's happening, and other parents are doing what we feel like are amazing things. I mean, just, you started out saying that you had baked pretzels with Ash yesterday. And I had a moment where I was like, why am I not baking with kids? Why am I not doing that? And then I had to realize, I don't need to do that. What I'm doing isn't enough, right? So I think we need to remember that we don't not to compare ourselves to what other people are doing, because that can just take you down a rabbit hole.
The compare and despair cycle is real. And it's especially right now with everyone home learning and and showing these like perfect little homeschool environments and the colored markers and the clean workstations and stuff.
So everybody knows, this is the one perimeter that is really clean in the room I'm in. So just, you have the best view of it right now. If I turned the camera, you would see that I am living in a real life right now.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say, someone wrote a comment, you are a bright spot, Amanda. That was one of the comments that just came up. So I wanted to share that. And I would agree wholeheartedly with that. I'm going to see if there's anything else. Neha wrote, there are days when I'm upset and it just pours out in tears, or other ways. How do you talk to kids about these emotions after the fact? Do you have an answer for Neha?
I'm the same way. And I think that it's okay to say, I'm sad, I'm overwhelmed, because that too is modeling for kids that it's okay to show your emotions. I'm sorry you're going through that. I think that that's doing the best you can. That's being a really good parent, is to be able to show that and to explain it, and to model that it's okay to feel right now.
Yeah, I think it is important. I know there are parents who are afraid to show that kind of emotion in front of their kids. And I'm not a huge crier, but when I cry, like, and wherever it may be. And I think it's a really nice opportunity for our kids to see that being a human is a full range of emotions, and that we can also feel that down, and to see how we cope with it, to see how we recover.
I was just thinking that, recovering from it, right?
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of our kids get scared when we're showing big emotions. They're really worried and they're really scared. And to be able to show them, but I'm okay. I'm coming back from this. I'm recovering. I'm really upset right now, but like half an hour from now, I'm okay. or tomorrow. I mean, it may be tomorrow. It may be tomorrow, and it's not a wash. It's okay. You know, every day's a new one, and you get to start over.
And helping our kids embrace that too. So if our kids are having a crying jag or whatever, our role is to be with them in that, not to fix it or try to get the crying to stop necessarily. You know, if it goes on for hours, we might want to see if we can pivot or redirect their energies, but that can be a really healthy release, and for them to not fear that reaction in themselves, and to know that, you know, you can actually lean into this. You can have a great release. And then, you know, an hour later, when you're doing something completely different, being like, how are you feeling now?
Right.
Isn't that interesting? That felt, when you were in it, doesn't it feel like it's never going to end? And yet here we are.
We're doing it. We're moving forward.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to just peek over here, and then I'm going to let you get on with your day. But I'm so grateful for this. Okay. Oh yeah. Cassie said, I've learned to narrate my feelings to help with the fear that kids see in me. Our kids' mantra is, you won't feel this way forever. I love that.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Narrating feelings. Super. So, all right, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this conversation. Amanda, again, congratulations on your book. It's too early for anything but water, but here's a cheers to you.
Thank you.
With your wonderful book, What is Empathy? And
I'll do the little weird thing again where I show it to everybody.
Yeah, do it. You should. It's beautiful. Love the illustrations. If you guys watching this haven't listened to the podcast interview and you want more, we have a very different conversation, actually.
We do. Yeah, I was just thinking that. Yeah, it's very different.
So check that out. And then again, next week is my interview with Tina Payne Bryson, which is a really powerful one. We talk a lot about what we're all experiencing right now. So be sure to check that out. And thank you again. And I'm just sending lots of love out to everyone watching this, and lots of deep breaths and calmness. Keep looking for the bright spots, even if they seem hard to find on some days. There are always a few.
And thank you for spending an hour with us.
This is really good. I'm in a much better mood than I was before this started. So thank you for spreading the good energy with us all.
Okay.
All right. Bye, everybody.